All right, I'm Robin Fuller, and I'm your instructor for BOT 1313 Applied Business Math. Today we're going to start with Chapter 1, Fractions. We're not going to be covering a lot of definitions in this class, but here's a couple you will need to know. In fractions, the bottom number is the denominator. The top number is the numerator. This is a proper fraction, well, almost. Actually, it should be written reduced down like this to 1/3. But with the numerator, it needs to be smaller than the denominator to make it a proper fraction. This is an improper fraction. You can see the numerator is larger than the denominator. It needs to be converted down like this to 1 5/6. This is a mixed number. For more, you can see on page 4, Figure 1-1. I also have a handout you can download off of Canvas about fractions. You can see there they love to use pizza wheels when describing fractions, and there's an example in the textbook. All right, let's move on now. Learning objective number 1, changing improper fractions and mixed numbers. The steps to change an improper fraction to a mixed number is in a green box on page 5. Throughout the textbook, you'll find green boxes like this with the steps to do a specific task. This one, for example, change an improper fraction to a mixed number. I recommend that you get some index cards and write these down on the index cards, so that way when you're doing the homework and the tests, yeah, you can use these on tests. All the tests are open book. You can refer to the index cards instead of trying to rifle through the book and try to find out the steps to complete the task. The first is divide the numerator by the denominator. So I take the numerator, 11, and divide it by the denominator, 8. 8 goes into 11 once, and 8 times 1 is 8, with a remainder of 3. Step 2, the quotient is the whole number part of the mixed number. Okay, so that 1 is going to be the whole number part. So I've got 1. And then step 3, the remainder is the numerator of the fraction. So the remainder of 3 becomes my numerator, and I keep the same denominator, 8, that I had before. So 11/8 is 1 3/8. All right, yep, 1 3/8. All right, that's how to convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. Next, we'll do that, we'll do the reverse now. We'll take a mixed number and change it to an improper fraction. That's also a green box on page 5. We want to change 3½ to an improper fraction. The first step is multiply the denominator of the fraction part by the whole number. So I've got these two right here, the 3 and the 2. I'll multiply those together, and I'll get 6. And then I'll take that 6, and this step number 2, add the numerator of the fraction part to the product in step 1. So I'm going to add the numerator to the product from step 1. So 6 plus 1 is going to give me 7. And you can see my denominator doesn't change, it stays the same. So 3½ changed to an improper fraction is going to be 7/2. All right, here is a transparency from the book author. You can see they just love the pies, or the pizza pies, whatever you prefer to call them. These are examples here you can refer back to if you need a little additional help on understanding fractions. All right, changing fractions to lower and higher terms. To reduce a fraction to the lowest terms is a green box on page 6. You can see there. And example C on page 6, we're going to reduce 12/6 to the lowest terms. And the first step is divide both the numerator and the denominator by a common divisor greater than 1 to arrive at a reduced fraction. Well, that's pretty simple, but it doesn't really tell you what number to use. Here's a simple rule that I use. Look at the two numbers. They're both even numbers. 12 and 6 are even, so that means they'll always be divisible by 2. You can actually also take a number and add the individual numbers up. For this example, 12 is 1 plus 2 is 3. And if that number is divisible by 3, in this instance, 12 plus 1 is, or excuse me, 1 plus 2 is 3. That's 3 is divisible by 3. So therefore I know that 12 is divisible by 3. 1 plus 6 is 7. That's not divisible by 3. So I know 16 is not divisible by 3. All right, but they are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to take 12/6 and divide both sides by 2. Remember, whenever you do the numerator, you have to do the denominator. So 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Well, you know what? They're both still even numbers, so that means I can divide them again by 2. Divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So reducing 12/16 down to the lowest terms is 3/4. All right, what the heck do I have down here? Okay, oh, there's the answer again. All right, next. Raising fractions to a higher term. The steps to raising a fraction to a higher term is in the green box on page 6. We'll look at example D on page 7. Raise 3/4 to 20/4. Okay, so I want to take 3/4 and I want to convert it to a number with 24, or a fraction with 24 as the denominator. So the first step is divide the new denominator by the old denominator. So I'm going to take the new denominator, 24, and divide it by the old denominator, 4. So that gives me 6. So I know that 6 was used, 4 times 6, to get the new denominator. So I'm going to use that 6 and multiply it also by the numerator. You can see here, I've got 4 times 6, which we already knew was going to be 24. And then I'm going to take 3 and multiply that by 6 to give me 18. So 3/4 raised to 20/4 is going to be 18/24. All right, learning objective number 3, adding fractions and mixed numbers. Fractions and mixed numbers are all numbers, so they can be added and subtracted just like whole numbers. To add fractions and or mixed numbers, you must first find the common denominator. The smallest common denominator is called the least common denominator. Now the steps to add 2 or more fractions and or mixed numbers is in the green box on page 7. Take a look at example F on page 7. All right, so we're going to add 5/6 and 3/4. Now in the book it says, for the steps in the green box, if necessary, change the fraction parts to fractions with common denominators. The common denominator is the denominator in the fraction part of the answer. Wow, I'm not really sure what the heck that says, but I'll show you what I do, how I do problems like this. Okay, I want to find a common denominator. So I'm going to take 6, and I'm going to write out the chain of 6, okay? So for lack of a better term, I got 6, plus 6 is 12, plus 6 is 18, plus 6 is 24, plus 6 is 30. Okay, then I'm going to take 4, and I'm going to do the same thing. 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus 4 is 24. Okay, now any of these numbers match yet? Let's see. Well, I got 12. 12's match. So that is my lowest common denominator right there. You can actually make a chart like this in Excel, and print it out and have it with you so you don't have to write it out all the time like I just did. Okay, so we've got, we're going to add 5, 6, and 3/4. So I've got, let me give myself just a little more board. I've got 5, 6 plus 3/4. All right, so I want to get them to, what was it, 12ths. In the textbook they used 24ths. I don't know why they use that, and when 12th is the least common denominator. Okay, so I know I've got 12 is my least common denominator. I know 6 times 2 equals 12, so that means 5 times 2 equals 10. And here I've got, let me do that better, 3/4, and I got a new denominator of 12. So I know that I can divide 12 by 4, which gives me 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. So I need to also do the same thing to the numerator. 3 times 3 is 9. All right, so then I've got 10/12 plus 9/12. That's going to give me 19/12. Okay, that's nice, but let's see, that's an improper fraction, so we need to convert that to a proper fraction, or a mixed number. So I'm going to divide 12 into 19. It's going to go once with a remainder of 7. So this is going to be my quotient. That's going to be 1. And my remainder is going to be my numerator, so that's 7. And my denominator is going to stay the same. So my answer is 1 7/12. I don't even need to reduce that down because I started with the least common denominator. All right, next up, we're going to take a look at a little bit more in Learning Objective 3. There are 2 ways to find the least common denominator, common denominator. You could go and multiply all the denominators together, or you could find the least common denominator. Let's try it the first way with this first problem. All right, so we've got 7/15 plus 5/6 plus 9/10. If I multiply all the denominators together, that comes out to be 900. So that would be 420 over 900 plus 180 over 900 plus 810 over 900. Well, that's not impossible to do with a calculator or even by hand. That's a little weighty. Let's try it by finding the least common denominator. Okay, I got 5/14 plus 7/10 plus 4/35. So I need to find the least common denominator among those 3. But I know one thing right here. With 10 as a denominator, that tells me my least common denominator is going to have a 0 at the end of it. Because, 10, the multiples of 10 are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You get it. They all end in 0. So I need to find 14, 35 multiples that end in 0. So I've got 14, 28, let's see, 42, 56, and then 70. There's a 0. And then I've got 35, which is 35, and 2 plus 35 is 70. So my least common denominator is going to be 70. So I've got 70 plus 70 plus 70. So I've got 14 times, let's go up and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 5 times 14 to equal 70. So 5 times 5 is 25. For 70, 10 times 7 is 70. So 7 times 7 is 49. And then 35 times 2 is 70. So 4 times 2 is 8. So I've got 25 and 49 is 74. And let me see, 74, 82. So once again, I have to divide my numerator into my denominator. That'll go once with a remainder of 12. So I've got 1 and 12/70, but they're both even numbers, so I can divide by 2. So my answer is 1 and 6/35. All right, learning objective number 4, subtracting fractions and mixed numbers. The procedure for subtracting one fraction from another is almost the same as the procedure for adding one fraction to another. There's a green box on page 9 for how to for subtracting fractions with mixed numbers. All right, borrowing. Sometimes you're going to have to borrow, just like you do in regular subtraction of whole numbers. For example, if you were trying to subtract 3/4 from 3 1/4, the fraction part 3/4 is larger than the 1/4, so you couldn't subtract. You're going to have to borrow 1 from the 3. Take a look at example K on page 9. Okay, we've got 4 and 4/9, and we're going to subtract 1 and 5/6. 5/6, well, let's convert them over first. Okay, we can see the multiples for 6 are 6, 12, and 18. The multiples for 9 are 9 and 18. So the least common denominator is 18. So then we've got 9 times 2 equals 18. So 4 times 2 equals 8. 6 times 3 equals 18. So 5 times 3 will then equal 15. So you've got 4 and 8/18 minus 1 and 15/18. Okay, so you can't subtract 15 from 18. Well, we don't mess with negatives. And so we're going to have to borrow 1. So we borrow 1 right here. You can see it's now 3, and 18 over 18 is 1. So 3 plus 1, that's my 4 right there. And then my 8/18 goes over here, and you can see the one in the denominator, or the bottom number, isn't messed with at all. It's still the same. So I add 8 and 18, and that gives me 26, and I still have my 3. So now I have 3 and 26/18. And so now I can subtract my 1 and 15/18 from that. And 15 from 26 gives me 11/18. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So, and they're reduced down to the lowest terms. So we're good. That's our answer right there, 2 and 11/18. Here's another example from the book author that you can refer back to on how to subtract fractions if you need one more example. Learning objective number 5, multiplying fractions, mixed numbers, and whole numbers. In fractions, multiplication and division do not require common denominators. Yay, we don't have to mess around with common denominators. To multiply fractions, that's on page 10 in the green box. Let's look at the example L on page 10. Okay, so we've got 1 2/3 times 4/5. All right, so the first step is change any mixed or whole numbers to an improper fraction. So I've got a mixed number, 1 2/3. So remember, I'm going to take 1 times 3, give me 3, plus 2 is 5. So I've got 5/3 times 4/5. And now it's just straight multiplying. I go 5 times 4 is 20. 3 times 5 is 15. So that can be reduced down to 1 and 5/15, which equals 1, I can do better than that. 1 5/15, which will equal 1. I can divide 5 into 5 once, 5 into 15 3 times, so that'll be 1 1/3. Let's take a look at another one, example M on page 10. 2/3 times 4/5 times 5/6. Okay, so I can multiply all those together, and I've got 2 times 4 times 5, which is 40. And then I've got 3 times 5 times 6, which is 90. Wow, reducing down is really simple here. I can divide them both by 10, and I get 4/9. That is those two multiplication. Get rid of the mixed number, then you just multiply numerators times numerators and denominators times denominators. All right, canceling common factors in numerators and denominators. You'll notice that we had a lot of the same numbers over there. The division of the common factors is often called cancellation. Canceling common factors is an option. It's not required to calculate the correct product. If you're doing this with a calculator where you're multiplying the numerators and then the denominators, I don't want any answers in decimals on this in this chapter, okay? Everything needs to be in fractions and whole numbers. But if you were to do that, I would say don't bother with cancellation. But if you're doing this with pen and paper, and I would definitely recommend canceling out. All right, what we're going to do, example N on page 11, we're going to cancel out some of the common numbers that we have here, or some of the factors. You can see I've got a 5 and a 5. Well, 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 5 once. We can reduce that down. Remember, I'm canceling out numerators against denominators. You can't cancel out numerators to numerators and denominators to denominators. It doesn't work that way. But I can take 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that is, and then since I've got 3 prime numbers in the bottom, I know I've reduced down to the lowest terms. So I've got 1 times 4 times 1 is 4. 3 times 1 times 3 is 9. So 4/9. All right, example O on page 11. We want 3/4 of 12. Of is just multiplication. So if we want to rewrite that, 3/4 of 12. And 12 converted to a fraction is just 12 over 1. But here I can reduce down. 4 goes into 4 once, and 4 goes into 12 3 times. So I then have 9 over 1, or just plain old 9. And example P on page 11, 2/5 of 2 3/4. Okay, so I've got 2/5, I can leave that alone, times, because of means times. So 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11, and fourths. So can I reduce down? Yeah, sure can. 2. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So 1 times 11 is 11, and 5 times 2 is 10, and that will equal 1 1/10 if I were to divide that out. All right. Now division, the last part of this chapter. Dividing fractions, mixed numbers, and whole numbers. With whole numbers, division is the inverse of multiplication. Perform a division problem by doing multiplication. Invert the divisor and multiply. The steps to divide fractions, mixed numbers, and whole numbers is on page 12. It's a nice green box. What we're going to do, you may have learned cross multiplication for division. In school, we're going to do something similar, just a little bit different. All right, if we had a mixed number, the first step would be to convert the mixed number to a fraction, an improper fraction. But we don't have that here, so we'll just move right along. We've got 3/10, and then the key is we're going to flip this pair right here and turn it into multiplication. So we're going to take 5 over 2. So you can see we flip the pair. Numerator is now the denominator, and denominator is now the numerator. And then we can just multiply. Well, we say we reduce. 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 10 twice. So 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So 3/10 divided by 2/5 is 3/4. All right, example R on page 12. 6 divided by 1 3/5. All right, so 6 is 6 over 1. And first I want to convert this, so let me still leave it as division. So 1 times 5 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So 8/5. It's going to equal 6 over 1 times 5 over 8. I flip the pair. And I can divide 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 8 4 times. So 3 times 5 is 15. And 1 times 4 is 4. And when I divide 4 and 15, I get 3. Okay, that's going to equal 3. And then remainder of 3. And I keep the same denominator. So 6 divided by 1 3/4 is 3 3/4. All right, here's a little one more slide from the book author. If you see another example on how to multiply and divide the fractions, you can check this one out. All right. That is all I have for Chapter 1. I'll see you again in Chapter 2.